honest. Brutally honest.
Straightforward.
Cuts to the chase.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for March 6th, 2023. First order of business is invocation and pledge of allegiance. That will be led by Councilmember Gardner.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the beautiful day that you've given us, Lord, and we're so blessed to live in this great part of the country, Father, and enjoy the changing of the seasons, and we just ask that you bless us every day as we continue to serve you and find ways to help other people, God. Thank you so much for all of those that serve our city day in and day out, and we ask for protection on them at all times, Lord, as they serve this community. And Father, help us tonight to have wisdom and good discussion on topics that will affect the citizens of this city. And we just pray for wisdom in all the decisions that we make tonight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner. First order of business is special guests and announcements. As y'all know, Liz Mathis, our former finance director, resigned and moved on to a less better place, but can't blame her for that, no. And so her last day as a full-time employee with the city was on Friday. And we have hired a new finance director, which is Beatrice Sousa. The interview process, it all went pretty quick. I think Liz, myself, and Tina interviewed Beatrice on Wednesday, and then she started Thursday morning. But it was nice that the three of us, Liz, Tina, and myself, interviewed and thought we struck gold. And so I'd like to take a minute to introduce Beatrice. If you could please come on up. She comes to us from Miami, where she's lived for the last 22 years, where she was a regional internal controller for a private company out there. She's a CPA, she has her MBA, and just moved here from Miami to Maumelle at the very beginning of last month. So she's been here a month now. So welcome to Maumelle, and welcome to the city of Maumelle.
Well, thank you for having me here, and very nice to meet you all. I don't know how to say you all, but nice to meet you. I just came, as the mayor says, 1 month ago here. I live here in Maumelle, so I'm very lucky to have this job, and I also very lucky to have Liz helping me in the transition. It's very important for me to get to know all of you and serve the city. So thank you. I don't know if you have any question for me. Nice to meet you.
No, you're good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Mosley?
Oh, yeah. I just want to again thank you and welcome you to the city and welcome you and look forward to working with you. I think we all share that. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item of business is the approval of the minutes from February 21st. The minutes that were in the original council packet were from the prior meeting. So y'all should have received by email a copy of the February 21st minutes. If there's any discussion on that, the floor is open. If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as submitted. Councilmember Tierney?
So moved.
We've got a motion to accept in a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. I don't see any public comment cards, so we'll move on to the financial statement. Liz, come on down. Just as a reminder, Liz is still working with us part-time. I think she said she was here at 5 a.m. and is here now at 6 p.m. So we appreciate her continuing to work with us during the transition. Liz?
Absolutely. So wanted to get you guys some January financials. There's not a whole lot in them just because of the way our accruals work, but I want to make sure that we talk about that because we haven't talked about it in about a year. So we'll start, I don't have slides for you, but I can kind of talk you through the report. So if you'll just look at page 4 is our general fund statement of revenues and expenditures. And you'll see there the first kind of several items on the actual year-to-date on our revenues show 0 on our millage, our franchise fees, our turnback funds, and all of our county and city sales tax. And that's because the money that we receive in January is actually last year's money. And so all of it has been accrued back. So it was in the financials that we talked about 2 weeks ago in the December numbers. And then our millage tax, there actually still won't be any revenue for February until they get those invoices out and start billing. This year, we don't really have any revenue. Everything that we get, again, for a 60-day window is our accrual period. So that through the end of February, beginning of March, basically, is we have to accrue everything to the correct period. So not a whole lot in revenues there. But in our police department, our departmentals is where we start to have some revenues. Police department current year-to-date is $32,000 behind budget year-to-date and $1,000 less than the prior year. You'll remember a large portion of police and fire's revenues that we look at is actually the LOP fee turnback funds that we won't see until July 1st. So I fully anticipate that through the first part of the year, both police and fire's revenues are going to look under budget just based on the timing of that. Fire department is $11,000 behind budget and $1,000 more than the prior year. Animal services is $2,000 ahead of budget year to date and $1,000 more than the previous year. Parks and Recs is $10,000 ahead of budget year to date, $2,000 more than the previous year. Seniors is $36,000 ahead of budget year to date and $8,000 more than the prior year. There's some other department revenues slightly under budget year to date, but with only 1 month of revenue, so I'm not overly concerned about that right now. Planning and permits and courts, those are both based on who files permits when and when cases are heard and things like that, so with those fees. So there's going to be some fluctuation in those revenues year over year. Overall, revenues for January were $10,000 ahead of the budget year to date and $1,000 more than the prior year. And then on the expense side, expenditures in all departments are below budget other than courts, which if y'all remember back to our budget sessions, we had a big one-time payout of some comp time that happened in January. So that was just a big chunk of their expense that we did at the beginning of the year. It'll even out as the year goes on as far as looking at a budget year to date. And then citywide services, this happens every year. It looks like it's way over budget at the beginning of the year, but that's because our liability insurance, our software subscriptions, any of our prepaid expenses that cross over a year, all of that gets booked in January. So that too will even out over time. So general fund balance at the end of January, fund balance was $8.3 million over the required minimum balance, and the current year revenues were $956,000 less than the expenses. The total fund balance at the end of January is right at $11.7 million. So then if you flip probably about 2 pages in your packet, 3 pages, sorry, to page 7, we'll look at the street fund. Similar story there. No revenues in January because we actually took everything and accrued it back to the prior year. And on their expense side, they're under budget about $88,000 from between the two. And the current street fund balance at the end of January was $4.5 million. And then you got another 2 pages, same story, no revenue. Because the money we got in January was actually what Central Arkansas Water had billed and collected in December. So again, it just kind of goes over to the correct period. And their operating expenses were $3,000 over budget year to date, $31,000 more than the prior year. Again, they have some annual expenses too. We hit them with vehicle insurance and some stuff like that. So that's probably the variance in their operating expenses. Their personnel expenses are $23,000 under budget year to date, $17,000 more than the prior year, and the sanitation fund balance at the end of January is right at $1.3 million. So, just a quick overview of where we're at right now, and then Beatrice and I will be working on February close this next week, and we'll get back on schedule, having the February numbers for you at the second meeting of March. So.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the financial report for January. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is the Planning Commission report. Councilmember Gronwald.
Okay, let me first say that this is my first one and I am on a learning curve. And I had no idea what they were saying. So, I went back, I actually watched it online and looked at the agenda and went back and forth, but they had 3 items of new business. All items they had talked about in previous meetings. There's the sub 23-4, the Hallher subdivision. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but the applicant was requesting deferral to March 23rd, and the commission passed that. And then item number 2, Mid-South Boring Site Plan, which I thought was a funny name, but it's at 205 Murphy Drive. And they talked about that quite a bit, and they were talking about screening hedge and things like that. It's a site plan, a landscape plan. All of that looks to be like it's going along just fine. And then the third item was NCS expansion site plan. It's a review for a 40,000 square foot expansion, and that is still in talks. They also elected their new officers for this year. Chairman is Craig Johnson, and vice chair is Mary Winnick. There were no public comments and no old business. That's all I got.
Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to a procedural motion. I'd entertain a motion from the floor to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. First item of unfinished business is the third reading of ordinance 1085, annexation of land, Ascent Development Property. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1085, an ordinance accepting the annexation of land commonly known as Ascent Development Property, to be titled the Ascent Development Annexation to the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, and making the Ascent Development Property a part of the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and open the floor for discussion.
Motion to approve ordinance 1085?
Got a motion and a second. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I missed the last meeting. I had a few questions for the last meeting, and unfortunately I was sick, so I'll ask them tonight. First of all, this property is such that it doesn't, I don't think it touches where the road is blocked off from Short Marche. It does not touch that. But if you take Short Marche, it looks like it eventually goes around, touches that corner of the property. Will this in some way affect whether that remains open or closed? In other words, if residents are developed in that PRD or something developed there, would there be a right to say we need access to that and that would open that up? Is there any effect on that?
That road was closed by the county judge. I don't know that that gives us any stronger of a legal argument than we've already had there to do that. So,
Does the applicant have any thoughts on that?
Eric Holloway, 116 Timberland Trail. I guess I would say that it probably moves us a little bit closer to that eventual reality, but in itself, no, it doesn't have any impact on it.
Okay. What about public notice? With that road touching that property, did we have a public notice sign out for the residents in that area? I'm kind of surprised we haven't heard from any residents expressing an interest on that.
We did have a sign, and I imagine we did hear from a few residents.
Mr. Grummer?
Scott Grummer, 550 Edgewood Drive. Is that the right address? Yes, we did receive, we did have a sign out on the property itself, and there was notifications in the paper. We did receive comments from surrounding residents that live on Marche Road inquiring about what it was going to be, but there was no opposition to it.
There was no opposition whatsoever?
No, I think there was some concerns over those that were hunting on that land, that it could be closed off to hunting, but, you know, that's one of the reasons why they've asked for this to happen.
Okay. All right, thank you. Also, are there residents on that property at this time that we have to provide services to?
All of the property is vacant, undeveloped property. The majority of it is in floodplain and floodway that is undevelopable, which is it's been zoned open space and floodway and floodplain. So the small portion that's on Short Marche currently is not developed.
Okay, so right now, I can't think of anything then we would need to do. There's no trash. Fire department would be if there's a forest fire, I guess, or woods fire. Police possibly on hunting and that sort of thing. Anything I'm missing on that? Any services we'd be providing that I'm not thinking about?
No current services at the time. We didn't see any initial impact on the city. Only as that area develops out over time will there be a further discussion on that point. But right now, that's really an island in the middle of nowhere with no purpose of development.
Okay, there's no imminent plans for development on that PRD?
There are no imminent plans, and maybe it'd make you feel better to know that no promises have been made to the applicant, and the applicant has no expectation of the city for any future services until such time as we develop. And we have no plans for development as it speaks.
Okay.
Until that road's opened up, it's really kind of a moot point.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 1085. Seeing no comments, roll call vote, please.
Mosley,
Yeah, I guess I'm going to vote yes.
Councilmember Grunwald. Yes. Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams. Yes. Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Motion carries. Ordinance number 1085 is adopted. Next order of business is the third reading of ordinance 1086, amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1086, an ordinance amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan and Map and for other purposes.
All right, go ahead and open the floor for discussion.
Motion to approve ordinance 1086.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Grunwald, Councilmember Mosley.
Yes.
Motion carries. Ordinance 1086 is adopted. We'll move on to the third reading of ordinance 1087, amending the Maumelle zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1087, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
Go ahead and open the floor for discussion on ordinance 1087. If there is none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1087.
So moved.
Got several motions and a second to adopt ordinance 1087. Go ahead and hit your button if you had discussion. I was on the wrong microphone mode. Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Grunwald,
Yes.
Councilmember Mosley.
Yes.
Motion carries. Ordinance 1087 is adopted. We will move on to the second reading of ordinance 1088, amending competitive bidding and purchasing. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1088, an ordinance to amend the law concerning competitive bidding and purchasing procedures and for other purposes.
All right, this item is on second reading. Go ahead and Councilmember Mosley.
Yes, I wanted to ask the city attorney, apparently he sponsored this, and it, it has to do with, I guess, bringing our code into compliance with state code. Is that pretty much the case?
Yes, that's exactly right, sir.
Now, could we have kept ours the way it was and just have a more stringent thing, or is this, or would our code be illegal?
No, I don't think so. I think we have to follow the state law.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion on ordinance 1088? Seeing none, it'll be on third reading at the next city council meeting. That brings us to new business. The first item of new business is resolution 2023-05. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-05, a resolution to amend the 2023 Drug Control Fund budget.
All right, this is, Liz, if you can come on down in case there's any questions. Some money from the Drug Control Fund. This is money that is in there due to different fines, I believe, or confiscated property.
Search and seizure, confiscated property, both federal and state.
Got you. And so, under state law, that money must be used for certain purposes. The police department has requested an appropriation of $60,000. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, will this be a one-time cost, or will there be annual operating expenses or anything associated with that?
Chief?
You don't have to ask that.
Yes, sir. This, initially, we'll purchase the equipment, and then there will be some minor yearly cost and maintenance fees associated with it that would come out of regular operating budget.
Sounds good.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes, Chief, I support it, of course, but I just wanted to hear a little bit more. I don't have any understanding of exactly what does it do and how does it work and that kind of thing.
Okay, I've actually got a handout for each of the council members for it. What we're looking for is to purchase license plate readers that would be stationed at the entrances to Maumelle. They'll scan each license plate as they come through, alerting us to any stolen vehicles, any Amber Alert vehicles that are associated with an Amber Alert, or individuals that have outstanding warrants. All the cities surrounding us, Sherwood, North Little Rock, Conway, they all currently have license plate readers in their arsenal, and it's a force multiplier for the police department.
So once it detects it, does it report on to the city, to your office, or to someone?
It would send out a broadcast alert to the officers on duty.
Oh, okay, okay.
It would go strictly to their terminal in their vehicle. It'd be the same as if we're running license plates as a car's going down the road. It's the same difference. It just reads all of them as they enter the town.
Great, awesome, I appreciate that, thanks.
sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, as far as that goes, how does it read them? Is it a visual thing? Is it take a picture and somehow or another
It takes a
recognize
picture
it?
of the license plate and the rear end of the vehicle, and then compares that to known offender license plates. And it still requires an officer to verify that, they call it a hit, that I have in here, that explains it. So that if it registers a vehicle that's stolen, it's considered a hit, and the officer would have to verify that visually on their own to double check, so that we don't just rely on the system.
Yeah, how instantaneous is it? I mean, if it reads one, is it pretty quick? Does it call the dispatcher, or how's it work?
No, it would send an automatic message to the terminals in the vehicles. So they would be alerted immediately or within seconds of that tag going past the,
All
the license plate
policemen on
reader.
duty?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now does it?
Well, that goes to all the officers that have a terminal in their vehicle.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Okay, does it somehow or another track those vehicles, or is it just saying it's here in town, or?
No, it would just say it's in town. The license plate readers would just be set up at the entrances and exits to Maumelle. They wouldn't be set up in the neighborhoods. There's no way to track with it. We also won't know who's driving the vehicle. All it'll do is give us a picture of the license plate and the rear end of the vehicle.
All right. What would the officers do? Would they just be on the lookout, or would they set up a post at the end of the city to try to catch them coming out, or what?
Typically, what would happen, we used we had a test system, and they would be on the lookout at that point. We wouldn't set up at the end of town, but we would see, sometimes you can see a pattern that at 3 o'clock they're coming through, so then the officer, if they don't get it that day, if it's a regular offending vehicle, then they could set up and wait on it.
Okay. Yeah, I do believe in civil liberties and things like that, so I understand the help it would be to the police in catching people like this, but I'm also, it moves us a little closer to instantaneous monitoring and kind of the
No,
big
sir, it does not.
Big brother state.
No, sir. In order for that to occur, then we would actually be able to see who's driving the vehicle and be able to track that vehicle throughout the city. This system does not give us that opportunity.
Right.
And if you'll notice in the handout I gave you, it addresses the concerns of the ACLU and how we are in compliance with the draft policy that I put in place, or that is in this handout. It's a draft policy that shows how we would account for that, and that there would be stiff penalties for misuse.
Okay, well, I'd like to read that over. I know it's a resolution, we need to vote on it tonight, so right now I don't feel comfortable in voting for it. I mean, if you're agreeable to delaying it and giving us a chance to read some of the information and maybe get more comfortable, you know, I might be a yes vote next week.
Okay.
So, anyway, I'll let the floor, any other questions here, but I'll make a motion here in a minute to delay it.
Councilmember Holt?
Just one last question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Does it, if an automobile is already inside the city limits and it's exiting, does it take the exit license plates as well as the incoming license plates?
Yes, sir. The way that we intend for it to be set up, yes, sir, it would. That would benefit us in an incident where, such as the murder we had in 2018, we could take the window and get the license plates of all vehicles that left the city during that time period, so that would give us one more investigative tool in trying to determine who may be the suspects or victims of crimes.
So it in effect is reading all license plates of all cars entering and exiting, is that correct? Or is
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
Currently, all those tags are being run now. We just do not have access to it.
So it would not and could not be used for other purposes such as a court trial and your vehicle was, you know, seen doing this and doing that, pertaining to some other issue. It would not be used for other issues other than a stolen car.
Yes, sir, it can be used for things other than a stolen vehicle, as I just said. It's taking a picture of the license plate of every vehicle entering or leaving the city. So it would give, if we have an incident that occurs during a certain window, then we can go back and request all vehicles leaving the city during that time or that entered during a time, so that we can use that as an investigative tool.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Williams?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-05.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second on the floor. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, just reading through here, making sure that I'm understand. So basically, if I'm reading this right, it's just gonna collect just the license plate numbers and keep it in a central database for about 150 days, where during that time, you could access it. And the only way it would come to any of you is if it is on the hot sheet. Does that make sense?
Correct. Correct.
So, all right, that eases a lot of my.
Or if we
concern.
make a request, if a detective
Within that time.
has a vehicle or and an incident such as, just last week, we had a resident that was followed home from Walmart. The suspects then entered her home through a ruse, snatched her purse with her car keys and phone, and fled the scene. We happened to be in location at Walmart, and we were able to identify the subject or the suspect vehicle, and in a short chase later, we're able to apprehend them. Had we not already been pre-stationed at Walmart on another investigation, that would have gone without us being able to stop them. So this way, we could put in a request for license plates between this time and this time in order to develop leads.
Okay, and also you said there's only be by how many receivers were in the vehicles? Will this
It would
give
be
you
all
enough
officers
that
on
you
duty.
need? Okay, all officers on
Yes,
duty,
sir.
okay, my bad. All right, that's all my questions.
And just to clarify, that is a draft policy, right?
Correct.
This is something that Chief and I have talked about for a couple years.
Yes, sir.
And so some of that is subject to change, or it may end up exactly like that. But one of the issues that I've been particularly concerned about is making sure that that data is guarded and not used for nefarious reasons, and that requires a lot of record keeping on our end, as well as time limits, so that we don't just have an extensive database. This is designed to catch things that are going on right now or that went on very recently, not to create not to just create a database of everyone or every vehicle's comings and goings. So just to point out that it is still a draft.
And in that draft, everything that's in red is referencing state law. So if the lettering is blue, then it's best practices as denoted by other agencies, and then red denotes state law. So state law requires us to only keep the data for 150 days unless it is tied to a case.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, could say if a resident's involved in a civil lawsuit and is interested in proving a point about somebody might have been at their house or not at their house during certain times and coming in or whatever, could they subpoena those records? Would they have access to those records?
They could FOI the records as far as I know, but it won't tell them that somebody's at their house.
Right.
It will only say if that vehicle, it's only what the same restrictions as the Arkansas Crime Information Center. It's whatever is subpoena or FOIable by them is FOIable with this license
So you
plate.
you could utilize and access those records with an FOI.
That is a question for the city attorney. I don't know for sure.
And part of it is gonna, I'll stall for you. Part of it is gonna depend if there's an ongoing investigation, right? There's certain investigative,
He's talking about if it's a citizen that wants to use the system
Yeah.
to their benefit.
correct, but I guess, you could think of the OJ trial where there was both a criminal and a civil proceeding, so there will be some protections, but it becomes a matter of public record.
Yeah, I guess, just for example, if a father had a child that was coming and going in the night and they wanted to check and find out if they were, could they subpoena all the records for a particular night to see if their child was coming and going in the middle of the night. And that would be a non-criminal thing, but could they do that?
Well, it looks like possibly that the Arkansas Code prevents that by stating that it's unlawful for an individual partnership corporation association to use an automatic license plate reader system. So that would be.
The question about whether it's FOIA-able is very interesting. I think it depends on what actually is being stored. As I understand it, automatic license plate reader systems, it's taking a photo, it's then reading the photo. Just like if I scan a document on our photocopier, it can suss out the text from it. And then it's sending that text in against, I guess, ACIC to look for open warrants, I'm guessing on the registered owner of the vehicle?
Correct.
Yeah, so look for open warrants, and it's also checking to see if the license plate matches something that's on a stolen vehicle hot sheet, something like that, or on the Amber Alert. That other information sounds like it would be ACIC. But if we got a FOIA request for the photos you have of every license plate at this entrance of the city between the hours of 6 and 7 p.m. yesterday, if it's just the photos, I think they would probably be public records. They wouldn't necessarily be attached to an undisclosed criminal investigation, which would kick it out of FOIA, and it wouldn't be ACIC information, which would be outside FOIA as well. ACIC is like criminal history information. So if somebody was requesting just a set of photos, and if we have them in our records, I think that they would be public records. Also, I would say that I think another argument against keeping those private would be that this is information which would be available to you if you were standing on a street corner with a camera. So I think if I were defending the city deciding not to turn over those records, I would have a difficult time because it's information that's disclosed to the public. That, after all, is a big reason why it doesn't really raise a lot of Fourth Amendment considerations here. The police can run, whether they attach a camera to the front of their cruiser, or whether, the automatic license plate reader systems, these are kind of like, it's a very new thing, so if there is gonna be there is some litigation in some places. I don't really think it's likely to win here, but there is some litigation in some places that the people think it creates a Fourth Amendment issue. I don't really find that persuasive, just because this is the sort of information which a police officer sitting in their cruiser can just type in license plates as they drive by their cruiser, and they can look it up, and if it shows that the registered owner has an open warrant, that's PC to stop the vehicle right there. So that's probable cause to stop. And to me at least, I don't see why automating that procedure raises a Fourth Amendment consideration. Will it make us immune from lawsuits? No. I mean, if the ACLU or some civil liberties group wants to sue us, sure, they can sue us. But to me at least, it doesn't quite raise a Fourth Amendment consideration. So that's it's a very long-winded answer. To your FOIA question, again, I think if they're just asking for a set of photos, and we have those photos in our computer, and these don't raise any big privacy or confidentiality issue, just the photos, I think we would have to turn them over under FOIA if they're in our computer system. And if they're not attached to any undisclosed criminal investigation.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I don't know, it just worries me about innocent people being monitored, their comings and goings, and records stored, and other people having access to them. So, I'll make a motion that we delay this and give some of us that might be concerned about this an extra 2 weeks to think about it. Make that motion.
I've got a motion to table resolution 2023-05. Pardon me? Correct, but the motion to table takes priority.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to table resolution 2023-05 till next meeting. But I still have comments. Councilmember Shin.
Where is this stored? Where's this information stored?
It'll be stored in a computer system that's separate from the rest of our documents.
Okay, but in the city, not with the service?
Correct. I'd have to look at the quote. It would be shared with North Little Rock, and Sherwood, since they're already running our citizens.
But it's not with a contracted service,
It is.
law enforcement.
With this one, there are multiple systems out there. The system that we looked at is one that we purchased the hardware and have it on site. There are others where it's cloud-based, but Arkansas law prevents them from being able to share that data, so that it's only for us. And Arkansas law especially is more stringent than most. In other states, wrecker companies can use it to drive through parking lots to look for repo cars. You can't do that in Arkansas, so. I don't have that quote. Strange.
Sorry, I have one question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
I might have misunderstood. Are the photos gonna be on the city's database, or hard drive, or network drive?
It would be a separate hard drive, yes, sir.
But it would be in our possession?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay, all right. That was what I thought, okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Gardner?
I had a question for Chief Picker, but I'm going to go back to Mr. Thornton for a second because I'm not an attorney. When I was looking at this under the protections section, which was 12-12-1804, the very first thing states that it can only be used for purposes described in the previous section, which was 1803. And that is a very restrictive use. Basically, it can only be used to, compare with the CIC and various things. So I wonder if state law is limiting it pretty much to say that it can only be used for those purposes, and maybe it's not FOIA-able. An average citizen couldn't come because it doesn't meet the definitions and that restrictions on use section.
Let me see.
While you're looking at that, I'll ask Chief Picker a question, though. You said our data was currently being captured, we're just not able to access it, and I presume
Correct.
that's because North Little Rock is already scanning them.
Yes, sir.
How about the county? Do they scan?
The county has their own system. I don't know what they're currently using.
Okay. So the license plates are already being scanned,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mayflower uses a system called Flock that we had tested. But unfortunately with that system is used a lot around the country. But we don't have access and wouldn't be able to share data with North Little Rock and Sherwood and Conway, which are our closest bordering cities.
So Conway uses the same system as well?
Correct, and
Okay.
so does Little Rock.
Do y'all have a good relationship, like with sharing information? I mean, is it pretty quick sharing back and forth between agencies?
Not currently on this, we have to request it.
Well, I guess what I
And
mean is.
It takes a long time, yeah.
Right, but if they are, in the middle of a case looking for something, they could reach out to Maumelle and vice versa?
They could, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so keep in mind also with the PSAP consolidation, that is the consolidation of the 911 centers. Maumelle, the current plans are Maumelle consolidates with the city of North Little Rock and the city of Sherwood to run one 911 center. And so a lot of the software and equipment that we've been purchasing through Maumelle Police Department is designed to work seamlessly with both North Little Rock and Sherwood. Since we're going to be, you'll have the same dispatcher dispatching, or the same dispatch center dispatching for all three of those cities.
And each officer that would have access to this would have to be trained, and those would be the only ones allowed to use it, which ideally would be all patrol officers and detectives, but.
Councilor Gardner. So I'm looking at 1212-1808, which is the very last page. There's a rule in the Freedom of Information Act, because they put exceptions to the Freedom of Information Act throughout the Arkansas Code. But there's a rule in the Freedom of Information Act that says that if courts are going to construe an exception, the legislature has to have specifically said, this is an exception to the Freedom of Information Act. Now you see in 1212-1808, Part A2 says that practice and usage data compiled and preserved under this provision, they are a public record for purposes of FOIA. And then in a little bit above that, in A1, it refers to captured plate data or data obtained from the Office of Motor Vehicles can only be disclosed to a few different people. It's not quite as clear as I would want it to be, but that is a pretty strong indication that the captured plate data And then responsive information that's received from the Office of Motor Vehicles is not going to be disclosable under FOIA. But our practice and usage data, which I kind of assume is going to be like metadata, basically, if we keep it, is going to be a public record. Now, if we received a subpoena, like Councilmember Mosley said, then that might be a little bit more difficult. But given 1212-1808, I'm pretty, again, it's not as clear as I would want it to be, but I'm pretty confident that the plate images would not be disclosable under FOIA. The usage information, which I guess is how many images we take, who accesses them, what are they maybe segregated for some other purpose for, that kind of information would be disclosable if we keep it. But the
There's
images
actually,
themselves.
the state law says that we have to disclose or create a file for every 6 months of how we, how many captures we have, how many hits, and what the outcome is.
Right. So that kind of information would clearly be a public record. Again, it's not as clear as I would want it, but I'm fairly confident that the images themselves would not be FOIAble.
So I couldn't come back then and just ask for a blanket, I want to see all license plates from 3 to 4 o'clock.
Correct.
Okay.
If you come to me with a subpoena from a court case,
Right.
I would have a tougher time saying no, because a subpoena is just a court order.
Okay.
But if you just come to me with a FOIA request for the images, I think I would tell you no.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Holt?
Thank you so much.
Chief, to what extent are we, pardon me, missing any identification cases as of now? In other words, are we aware that we're not able to catch and we're missing automobiles that we should be able to catch because not having this in effect? And to our city attorney, should something of this nature, a new tool like this being done, put in place where, as we've said, all license plates are being taken, is this something that the public should be possibly informed of, that this is in force? Maybe the public should be able to have a say-so about this, or is it strictly limited to this body?
I think if you want to ask the public what their opinion is, certainly you can. I'm not aware of any rule or law that would say that you have to. And if you're talking about like a sign up that says that beginning March or April the 1st, we're going to put up an automatic license plate. I don't think so. I'm not aware of one. I could certainly double check.
Right. But I think I heard you say a while ago also that this cannot be used in other instances other than what it is intended to be for maybe catching stolen vehicles or something of that nature. Did I hear that correct, Chief?
It can be used for criminal cases.
It
Yes,
can
sir.
be used?
Yes.
Okay. So it's more than just missing, or stolen vehicles and that type of thing?
It's
Okay.
stolen vehicles, Amber Alerts, missing and abducted children, outstanding warrants, or any other criminal case that we can determine to attempt to identify a suspect vehicle.
I have one more, just because we're talking about privacy so much, one more thing I wanted to add, Councilmember Gardner. This also allows disclosure if permitted by a certain federal law, which is called the Driver's Privacy Protection Act of 1994. I'd have to double check what that means, what the scope of that law is. Yeah. And again, in response, Councilmember Holt, to your question, if we have the records and somebody comes to me with a subpoena from a court case, or even a specific court order from a judge, I would have a hard time saying no to that, to turning over if we have information.
Okay.
And to answer your question about do we know of instances where this could come into play, the majority of our crimes in Maumelle are property crimes. Every vehicle, I don't want to say every because that's too much, but most vehicles that are stolen in Maumelle begin with a stolen vehicle from another city. So if a vehicle is stolen in Maumelle, then the majority of the time, we will locate a vehicle that was stolen out of another jurisdiction within our city limits in close proximity to that vehicle.
A
And
robbery.
we currently don't have a way to track that.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
And I guess what you're saying, Chief, is then when that stolen vehicle entered into the city, y'all would get a BOLO to
Correct. It would,
be on the lookout for.
it would prep, almost like a warning order in the military. Hey, you've got a criminal in the city that's coming with this stolen vehicle, so be prepared.
A robbery, Matt, would have taken place someplace in Maumelle, and so, if the, license plate is there, then can be used as a watch.
Yes, sir, and we can send it out to other agencies. So if we were to, say we're able to determine a suspect vehicle and license plate, we can send that out to other agencies, and then they can put that in their system so that we can then track what city that vehicle went to. Other cities are more in-depth with their license plate readers than what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is vehicles entering and exiting. They have certain, in Little Rock, they have certain neighborhoods or certain areas, corridors that they highly place these license plate readers so that they are able to track down to a subdivision level. But we're not asking for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mosley?
I forgot what I was gonna ask. Come back to me if we're getting ready to vote.
Councilmember Grunwald?
It's really more of a comment to some of the things that have been said, and then just a general opinion question for the chief. So as I understand it, these are activities that are already being done, but this is going to enable your officers to do it in a more efficient and more timely manner, ultimately making the city safer, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's a force multiplier is the way we look at it.
Right. Which is also going to make the jobs of all of our officers a little bit easier, hopefully. But as far as the comment about do we need to let the public know, get them involved, anytime something like that comes up, I'm always for full disclosure and putting that out there, what's happening. But as far as letting them know and asking for their feedback, I feel like to the most of the time, they have elected us to make these decisions. So that's how I kind of feel about that. I understand everybody's question just to make sure that we understand all of the possible outcomes as far as FOIA and things like that. But I think the bigger picture that we might be losing sight of is that ultimately it keeps the city safer. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams?
I just think I like the efficiency of it. I think I like what I'm hearing, and I like sharing information with other cities that are already doing this and making your life easier, maybe, hopefully. We're already being tracked by our cell phones, so I'm not worried about the Big Brother issue or anything like that. But I do think I agree with Councilmember Grunwald. The efficiency of it and the safety factor, I just don't think we can say no to. And I know we've wanted this for a long time. It's been talked about in my house for a long time. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion second on the floor to table Resolution 2023-05 to the next city council meeting. Is there any additional discussion on that item? Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, just final thing here. I compliment on the police on trying to enforce the law and catch criminals and look for the best and most efficient way to do so. But I do think it's our job to try to balance that with citizens' right to privacy and the monitoring of innocent people's comings and goings and things like that bothers me. And like I said, I'm just, I haven't read through this, but right now I'm not at all comfortable to vote for it. I've seen our city attorney change his opinion here 2 or 3 times based on reading a couple of clauses here, I'd like to see him a little bit more comfortable in some of his opinions too before I vote on it. So I'll be voting yes to table it.
Thank you. Also, just to clarify, there is no vote taking place on the policy. It is just the appropriation of the money. And so keep that in mind when reviewing the policy. If there's things you like and that makes you vote for it, doesn't necessarily mean that'll be in the policy, and the opposite is also true. This is a budget resolution. So, Councilmember Shin?
What's to say 3 years from now, we're tracking expired tags? That's probable cause too, but it's not a criminal action.
As far as I know, it's not able to tell us if a tag is expired. It just takes a picture of the tag and sends back what information we have put in. We don't put in information on expired vehicle tags.
You don't right now.
No, we don't enter that information. We can't enter that information. That is done by the DMV, not by us.
Okay, but it's reading the tag. There's a sticker on the tag. It would show the color, it would show the date.
I don't have an answer to that then.
Just a thought.
Councilmember Gronwald?
I hear what you're saying, trying to come up with possible future applications. I'm not sure, even if it did that, but it sounds like it wouldn't do that. I'm not sure what the issue would be. I mean, if somebody's tags are expired, they should get them updated. I personally, the reason why I feel strongly about this, because I personally am an assault victim. And so if there is something that at all entrances and exits of Maumelle can keep us safer, then I'm 100% behind it, and that's why. As far as worrying about people, you know, the innocent folks, like hopefully all of us who are not criminals, their privacy, I completely understand that, and I want to protect people's privacy as well. However, I'm more concerned about somebody being attacked in their home from, breaking and entering, or some of the things that the chief has mentioned. I'm much more concerned about that. And for those of us who are not criminals, then we have nothing to worry about. So.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yeah, when I was getting ready to move to Maumelle about 30 years ago, and I was talking to a lot of my different customers about what I liked and didn't like about Maumelle, and I was considering it. And one customer said, well, I would never live in Maumelle, because if there's a crime in Maumelle, they can block off the city and they'll catch the criminals as they're leaving. I said, well, you've just talked me into it. I like the capacity of the police to be able to, deal with offenders as they enter rather than having to be reactive. I'd like them to be proactive. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, do you have any opinions or thoughts you'd like to share on this whole subject?
On license plate readers?
Yes, sir.
I think that license plate readers can be a tremendous tool. It's my understanding from the police department that they believe that the homicide that occurred in 2018 would probably be solved years ago if we had that ability to track who left the city at that time. I do have concerns about abuses in the system, and it's one of the things that Chief Pickard and I have talked about for several years,
Yes.
on and off, as well as other members of his department, in order to ensure that that data was not freely accessed, that it wasn't something that an officer who was just sitting bored in the office one day or had a few minutes could pull up and check whether or not his wife left last night. And so one of the, that sort of stuff is very important. It was one of the reasons that we wanted a time restraint. We didn't want to just completely gather an infinite amount of data. We looked into organizations like the ACLU and those fighting for civil liberties in this instance to look at what are those best practices that both allow the law enforcement officers to effectively police in this modern time, but while still put maximum protections on individual liberty and privacy. Chief has worked on this, and his team have worked on this for a while. I think that they're good. I think that before they're allowed to purchase it, in my mind, I need to make sure that we button down every last kink in that and have a policy and not just a draft policy. And that's something that we've continued to be working on. The timing of this resolution is actually more in line with Ms. Mathis's departure, as we wanted to clear out pending budget resolutions. I feel confident that, well, it's one of those times where I feel confident that I'll make a decision that I agree with, right? Most of the time that's true. Before I sign the PO to purchase this, I'll make sure that I'm comfortable with the policy, and so therefore I feel comfortable with that. Whether y'all feel the same level of comfort is up, that's up in the air, but it is, all the concerns that everyone has mentioned from both the safety side to the privacy side are things that we've talked about for years, that they've looked at other departments' best practices, that we've bantered back and forth, and that I'm not even sure if the city attorney has seen this version. It's still in a proposal stage, but I assure you, before we put into place that sort of policy and magnitude, I know when I was city attorney, we looked at body camera footage policy. This is not insanely different, and in some ways far less invasive than body cameras. When an officer arrives at your home, usually in your most vulnerable moment, and they're walking through your home and seeing all sorts of stuff that you don't want to share people, there's body camera recording that, and there's usually multiple recordings of that. So this is the sort of stuff that the police department, city attorney, my office, really sort of grapple with and ensure that we're both protecting privacy while effectively and transparently policing. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table resolution 2023-05 till next city council meeting. Any discussion on that motion to table? Seeing none, all those in favor of tabling this till next meeting say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley,
I said yes to table.
Councilmember Grunwald. No. Councilmember Mazzoni,
No.
Councilmember Gardner,
No.
Councilmember Williams. No. Councilmember Tierney,
No.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Motion to table fails. With that, we also have a motion and a second to to adopt resolution 2023-05. Is there any additional discussion on that? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley,
Guess I'll be voting no on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't need to do a roll call vote, but I assume we'll get to a roll call vote. We'll just take a voice vote since it's a resolution at the start. All those in favor of adopting resolution number 2023-05, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries.
Roll call, please.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley,
No.
Councilmember Grunwald. Yes. Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
No.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Chief. With that, we will move on to the next resolution, which is resolution number 2023, amending the resolution 2023-06, amending the 2023 grant fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-06, a resolution to amend the 2023 grant fund budget.
Liz, come on down. Tell us what we're looking at.
So as we have gotten better at using our funds and we set up a grant fund instead of having Our grant money's kind of mixed in the general fund, which was our practice before. We have this grant fund. If you go back to your 2023 budget book, there was some grant fund appropriations in the 2023 budget for grants that we already knew we had or that were, kind of done deals in the pipeline. This is the grant with the state of Arkansas for the all-inclusive playground, and we did not officially have the grant and the grant numbers at the time that we did the budget. So now that we actually have that grant, we'll come to you. And this really should become standard practice for this grant fund, that if we can plan for it ahead of time in the budget process and include it, we will. But when these grants come up and we get them and we're accepting them, there should be a budget appropriation in the grant fund allowing for that appropriation and kind of acceptance of the grant from the council. And then if you have any questions about the project, you will have to ask Mr. Rayburn.
Thank you. And this is, of course, because we received that $240,000 grant from the Arkansas Office of Outdoor Recreation for the construction of the all-inclusive playground. You'll see the appropriation from the grant fund balance is $300,000. You may recall that we transferred that money out of the general fund and into the grant fund. So this is not unanticipated revenues. It's exactly as anticipated. We're just now appropriating that money to the so that it can be spent. Any discussion on Resolution 2023-06? If not, I entertain a motion to adopt.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2023-06. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. With that, we'll move on to Resolution 2023-07, amending the 2023 General Fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-07, a resolution to amend the 2023 General Fund budget.
Thank you. We have, in case you haven't noticed, a bunch of housekeeping budget resolutions, and that is just because with the changing of the guard in the finance department, it was better to clear these out than wait and see if they solve themselves, and it just slipped through the cracks. There was a salary discrepancy in the budget this time where an employee was budgeted for $1,030 less than it was supposed to be. This is just clearing that out. Liz and I were originally going to wait until the end of the year, anticipating that someone would resign or take some extra time off and that would fit. But rather than try and remember that in the back of my mind, we decided to just run that resolution. I'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion on Resolution 2023-07.
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That brings us to Resolution 2023-08, amending the 2023 General Fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-08, a resolution to amend the 2023 General Fund budget.
All right, this is a resolution, as we've talked about. Liz has quit her position and is here tonight, and we anticipate assisting the transition with Beatrice, and Liz will be wrapping up the 2021 ACFR as well. Liz is a very kind and nice person. That's what everyone tells me. However, I don't think she wants to do this for free, so we want to effectively be able to compensate her for her continuing to stick around. Any discussion on this resolution?
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That brings us to Resolution 2023-09 regarding audit procedures. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-09, a resolution requiring an annual audit to be performed in accordance with the guidelines and format prescribed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and the United States Government Accountability Office, and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. So this will be an annual resolution that we see, as we've found a state law that requires such a resolution, and that just authorizes the audit to occur for 2022. Got a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2023-09. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I had a very long conversation with Ms. Mathis the other day, and we touched on a number of topics, and I understand a lot of things a little better, as far as our accounting and our auditors and all that. And from what I understand, the auditors perform a lot of services that we weren't receiving with our previous auditors, some schooling and forums and workshops and things like that to help in certain matters, and I think they provide more assistance than our previous auditors, so it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about the amount of money we pay them. So I just wanted to mention that, and if she wants to expound on that, that would be fine if there's other things she'd like to mention. But anyway, yeah, I'll be a yes vote on this.
Thank you, sir. I think that one of the big differences is we look at it more as a partnership, a whole year-round partnership, and now I've talked and Liz is going to come correct me. But and so that does include workshops and trainings, and we rely on them to call us out when we're wrong, but we prefer that they help us not be wrong to begin with on those things, and that is really that full service that we were looking to switch to. Liz, tell them where I'm wrong.
Well, no, you're not wrong. I was just kind of
Say
going
it
to
again.
explain it a little. So as GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, changes rules, adapts rules, comes out with new things, they are a partner for us. So effective 2022, there's new lease standards. Starting in 23 or 24, there's going to be new standards on software agreements, because everything's moving to cloud-based software, and so they want you to account for it differently. And then GASB 34 is the big one that governs how we prepare the ACFR, excuse me, they changed terminology, the ACFR, and they're working on revising that and updating that. So as the Governmental Accounting Standards Board changes these accounting standards, Forvis has been a great partner to us. I've gotten to participate in 2 years in a row of training on all of the GASB updates, and they're working with everybody 2 years ago on how to start preparing and what data to gather to do the different lease standards and all of that kind of stuff. And so they're going to work with the city on being able to implement those new standards, which keeps the city finance department from having to suddenly be an expert on all the details of GASB. They can be the really expert and then figure out what the city has that pertains to that, because there's a whole lot in it that maybe doesn't pertain to Maumelle, but it might to other cities, and they're really an expert on that. And they did a lot of testing and questionnaires and things like that we'll have to do every year as part of the audit process. And it was just really, really in depth. So I learned through that process some things we needed to be doing a little differently. And that, to me, is how a good audit relationship should work with your audit firm. That, yeah, put it in there that we missed something or that there's something that needs to be improved or fixed, but then be a support to us throughout the year when we have questions trying to implement stuff or doing training to make sure that we're ahead of the game and ready to roll out those implementations. So,
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion second to adopt resolution 2023-09. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Which brings us to the next budgetary resolution, which is Resolution 2023-10, amending the 2023 general fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-10, a resolution to amend the 2023 general fund budget.
Thank you. So this is $7,000 being appropriated for additional audit help that we're hoping to not need. So Liz and Beatrice will work together on the 2021 audit, with mostly Liz finishing up where she's been rolling and hopefully throwing some nuggets of wisdom out along the way. We anticipate that Beatrice will be well suited to begin the 2022 ACFR report, but in the event that the onboarding isn't going as smoothly, or it's just, anyways, we're adding this so that we can hire the auditors to help prepare that report also. We've done this in the past, a number of years ago, primarily when we were switching finance directors so quick that our former auditors assisted in some ways in preparing those. We're hoping not to need this. What I didn't want to do was wait a few months and then come back and say, hey, we might need this additional help now. I don't like the way that might seem to imply that the new finance director was not capable of doing it. It's something that we're anticipating maybe needing, with the hopes of not necessarily needing it. So now is the best time for it, in my opinion. We'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion on Resolution 2023-10. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to kind of be proactive here, because that preparation of that report seems to have been an unexpected time consumer for everybody for the last few years. I know a lot of people have underestimated when we'd have a final report ready and that sort of thing. So I think this is good, because last thing I want to do is fall any further behind than we are. I think we're still playing catch up, but we're catching up. So I think that's good, but I would like you to address, because one thing a lot of people don't realize is that auditors are not supposed to be auditing financial records that they've prepared. In other words, an auditor is not supposed to be involved in preparation of the numbers that go into a report. So I understand what's going on here, but I would appreciate if somebody explain it to the public and everything as to why they're able to assist in this report preparation.
So it's actually not that the auditor can't write the report, because in a lot of audits, the auditors do write the reports. And so doing the ACFR was actually the first time in all my years of doing audit work that I actually wrote the audit report. In nonprofits, typically the auditors write the entire report. What they cannot to do is prepare the financial data that goes into preparing the report. So they cannot have access to our bookkeeping, our general ledger to post entries, and that's where that control would fall. So there are cities that pay the audit firm to prepare the ACFR every year. In my mind, it's probably long-term going to be harder for an audit firm to do it than to do it in-house, because you've got that whole management discussion, analysis, and things like that are part of that report, where you really have to explain the operations of the city in the year and kind of put all the numbers to context. And so the city's still going to have to provide all of that data to somebody else to write it, which to me is more cumbersome than just writing it. But they're extensive to prepare. You got to realize that most cities take about 6 months from year end to prepare an ACFR. That is really the standard kind of timeline. Even the the GFOA awards for excellence for the annual comprehensive financial reports that's kind of where their timeline falls for submission and things like that. We have to wait for LOPFI and APERS and some other people to do their annual comprehensive financial reports and actuarial reports before we can have data to do ours. And so on a regular basis, you're going to be looking at about a 6-month window to finish that report. So yes, it is a lot. It is time consuming. It's mostly time consuming because you need to be able to sit and work on it uninterrupted. And when you're helping, run the finances of the city, that's hard to do sometimes, is to just get those blocks of time where you can sit down and focus on it. It's one of those things where you get into it and you start working on it and then you have to stop and put it away. So when you pull it back out, you have to kind of read, like, where was I? What was I in the middle of? And it takes a little bit of time to get back into it. So I support adding some funds just to support Beatrice if it's needed through preparing 22. I'm going to work with her as best I can through 21s and teach her what I know and how we've done it. So she may be able to just pick it up. But, I mean, as y'all know, 2018 was the first one I did, and it took me a good 6-9 months to get it done. So the idea here is we are almost caught up, and we don't want to lose that momentum and would like to kind of get it to where we don't get behind again.
Sweet, thank you. Any additional discussion on Resolution 2023-10?
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion to approve and second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. With that, we will move on to item G on the agenda, Park on the River. That was tabled, the Park on the River discussion. That was added at the last council meeting at the request of Councilmember Mosley. We tabled it to this meeting. So without further ado, Councilmember Mosley.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask permission to run out into the audience for a second here and to give Ms. Timmons a sheet that was prepared by the City Finance Director so that she'll know what we're talking about or looking at here, because everybody else up here has a copy. I've got one here. If you'd like to take that. Thank you. I guess I won't have to run out. Okay, yeah, let me kind of start at the beginning, and I don't expect us to arrive at any kind of a conclusion or decision on this thing tonight, because I don't even know what the right answer is at this point, and I'm not that much further ahead than you guys are. I did make some phone calls here to try to gather some information so that we'd have some information to look at, because I knew Ms. Mathis was going to be leaving, and I was afraid she wouldn't be here with any financial numbers and that sort of thing. So she prepared the little financial sheet there that I put in front of everybody on history. And we've got a lot of folks on the city council that probably didn't live here when this Park on the River came about and everything. So I'm going to give a real brief history as to what we got going here. We've got, back in the Birch Johnson era, I would assume back in 2003 or 2004, a property up there on the river overlooking the river came available for sale. And I think Mayor Johnson at the time said, gee, this should be a great asset for this city. And the city council agreed, so they bought that. I don't know what it was paid for, $1.4 million or something. And so it became the Park on the River. And they tried to decide what should be done with it. And they decided to go ahead and make it a kind of an event center. And they contracted. The first contract was done back in 2006, and it was done with Team Summit, that is, I guess, owned by Ms. Timmons. And it went, I don't know, I don't know how long that went, but eventually in 2015, it was renewed, and that, I've been on the council since that was renewed, and I was involved in that, and went out, and Ms. Timmons took me for a tour and showed me what she did and what the deal was and how that worked. And at the time, we looked at some other uses, and I actually wrote an email that I sent out to all my constituents asking them if they knew any better use than extending this lease agreement for an event center with Team Summit. And nobody could come up with anything any better. So we went ahead and entered into a 5-year agreement. If you look at the contract, it's cancelable at any time, I think, by Ms. Timmons or us. So it's kind of just it's kind of arrangement that goes along as everybody's happy. If some reason somebody's not happy, they can cancel it and we'll do something else. But it went on till 2015, and from what I understand, well, actually, this is something I didn't catch. I thought it was just for a strict 5-year term, but it says continuing for 5 years thereafter. The agreement may be renewed at the same rate, or any such renewal may be made by otherwise. So, in other words, I guess this thing has gone beyond perhaps the 5-year limit. It was the initial term was going to expire in November 2020, as I understood. And so, anyway, COVID came along, from what I understand, and the events dried up for a period of time, and nobody had asked about this until in our budget workshop here this year, and I asked about it, whether it was up and running, and I think if I understood the mayor right, he said the contract expired in 2020, and while they were still I think, if I understood it correctly, they were still allowing the Team Summit exclusive use of the facility, but yet we weren't collecting rent or anything like that anymore. So at the time, we said, we need to have a discussion and look at this, see what's going on. There's some questions of why are we still doing this? Why wasn't this brought back up? So that's kind of where we are. I've got a number of questions. And I think Ms. Mathis can answer anything to do with financial. Mr. Rayburn can answer some questions. I originally thought Mr. Rayburn was probably the contract administrator on this situation, but it turns out he's not. He said he does not administer it, he just takes care of it. And I guess enters some expenses that they charge to the facility. And I think those are what's reflected on this Park on the River history, is his expenses, not necessarily what we received in revenue. But then the total revenue up here is apparently the revenue, the $1,000 a month, plus I guess the 25% of the net income. That's supposedly what that is, and the utility money that we collected for it, according to Ms. Mathis, was booked as a offset to the expenses that the Parks Department booked. So it's not clear what those were, or at least I'm not sure if it's clear to them or not. I've got questions like where are the records, where are the records that would document what we should have received for revenue each month for the term of this, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of unanswered questions here. I'll open it to the floor right at the moment, but I've got some probably other questions and comments to make here. I'm just kind of running and gunning with this, and we need to, like I said, I don't feel like we need to do anything, make a conclusion tonight, but we need to, I thought Ms. Dunn might be here tonight. She had some ideas on possible other uses of the facility, and I wanted her to put those forth. So, anyway, anybody else have anything else they want to talk about or ask questions? In fact, there she is.
You're
No,
good.
not yet, not yet.
Does anyone have any comments? Councilmember Tierney?
I just wanted to confirm what Mr. Mosley was saying, because you're showing some losses in 2020, 22, 2021 of, combined like about $35,000, and that does not include the expenses of the utilities, right?
Liz?
So, the numbers in 2017, 2018, and 2019 reflect where we were billing rent, and the percentage. From everything I can tell, and from talking to my staff that was here at the time, we had to wait on the utility bills to come in before we sent them the bill for the rent and the utilities for reimbursement and things like that. So the timing of when we billed them and recorded the revenues doesn't really match up periods wise. So like in September of 2019, we billed for like 4 months. So it was kind of this thing where the finance department was kind of losing track of things. We all know they were a little bogged down, and then they would try to catch up. And so towards the end of 2019, they never caught up. And then we went into COVID, and then we transitioned, and kind of by the time I got my hands on it, I was like, hey, do we need to go back and bill all this stuff? And they were like, no, we're not billing them because of COVID and the contract. And so admittedly, I kind of went, okay, not going to worry about this. Let's move on and try to get audits caught up. So what you're looking at is where in 2017, 18, and 19, we were billing, Team Summit was paying. The timing of it was kind of a mess, but the utility bills, we were paying the utilities, and then they were reimbursing us for the utilities. But they were recording it as like a credit to the expense line. So the expenses you see there are kind of the balance on the utilities was kind of the balances of what they didn't bill that period, but then maybe they billed them for it the next period, that kind of stuff. Starting in 2020, we didn't bill them anymore. The finance department doesn't really do any billing anymore. That was one of the few offsets, and we just never picked it back up. So what you're seeing there for 2020, 21, and 22 is the actual expenses that the city has incurred for that facility, including the utility costs. But we haven't billed anyone for that, so there's no revenue, which is why you've now just got losses. Does that make it a little more clear?
I think so.
At least where the numbers came from and kind of what happened on our side, on the finance department side.
My mic?
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes.
You were done, Councilmember Tierney? Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah, as far as the amounts received each month for utilities, is there any way to prepare a schedule of that? Is there documentation of that? Are there billing records,
Yeah,
receipt records?
As I think I told you on the phone, I think 2017 has been destroyed. We only have a 4-year record retention on the detailed bills and all of that stuff. We have ledger, but the details may have already gone through record destruction. But the finance department takes the utility bills by meter and bills them for the whole city. So yes, we've got utility bills, but it's those meters, and we say, okay, these meters go to the pool, and these meters go to the park, and these go to Public Works. And so we don't send out all the utility bills to all the departments to code and send back to us. We do those bills just in the finance department.
So you would be able to recreate the records for the amounts billed, apparently not 2017, but from there on, and how much we received for what we billed? I mean, I assume we
have received everything we billed.
Okay.
There is no outstanding receivables from Team Summit. They've paid everything that we sent them a bill for.
Okay. That'd be nice information to have as far as additional revenue there. Another question I had, as far as the total revenue figures up above, if we're billing 1,000 a month, and then plus 25% of net profit, why shouldn't that number be at least $12,000 every year? Why would it be any less?
So remember what I was saying about how we were like behind on billing and then we'd catch it up? So in March of 19, we billed for the last part of 2017, and we were not great with dates. That's part of the reason we had so much challenge reconciling things back in those past years. So they booked it the day they did the invoice. They didn't go back and book it to the right period. Does that make sense? From the accounting standpoint on our records that I have here. So if I go look at the bill detail, it might have been a bill for October, November, and December of 2018, but we didn't send it or book it on our books until March of 2019, right?
Okay.
Like there was just, and it was like that. I mean, I kind of had to dig through it to even come up with the revenue numbers like that. We weren't breaking out revenues by cost center at that point in time either. So I really had to go back to the billing records to figure out what those revenue numbers were.
How would the accounting department have known what the 12% of net revenue is?
I believe the Team Summit was providing them a report for sales.
Okay.
And just so we're clear, that we're talking about a time before Liz was here.
Yes, I understand. You came in summer of 2020?
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
think she's doing a lot of filling in the gaps there.
Right.
Of what I can tell from what's in the system and the data that's available.
Okay.
And it was like the 25% was a separate, like in the billing system, there was a line item for rent and then there was a line item for the percentage of sales. And so, it was separated on the bill. So they would have had to have some record from Team Summit that provided the data to generate that percentage.
All right. Well, the term of the contract says it goes for 5 years and then continuing for 5 years thereafter. It sounds like we're still really under a contract here.
I don't necessarily read that way.
Yes, I didn't read it that way.
It's saying it goes for 5 years and then it gives the start date and says and continues for 5 years thereafter.
It says beginning on the so many days of November 15, continuing for 5 years. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Continuing for 5 years thereafter.
And so I think it's safe to say that we're out of contract.
Okay.
now. And if the council has a better suggested use for this, then we can discuss that. I mean, we can discuss whatever y'all want. I'm just trying to provide some form to what I
Right.
think everyone's trying to figure out what we're talking about.
Well, is there,
I'm trying to figure
should we billing, if it's still being in use, if there's still events going on, should we be billing for something that's been going on the last 3 years? And Ms. Timmons, if you'd like to come up and give us a status of what's going on over there, that'd be very helpful also. Thank you.
Timmons, 117 Southfield Drive. The original agreement is, was the monthly rent plus 25% of the minus my expenses. You guys would bill me, we paid everything that we were billed. Where we lost it was in 19 with the COVID. Everything was shut down. Nothing was happening. Governor closed everything up. I lost my person who was actually running it. So I was still paying for somebody to come and clean it. We still have the employees using it because they're out massaging the lawn and stuff. Well, at the end of every week, I paid somebody to come and clean it. Trying to make sure it was always, ready for whatever. Throughout the week, if I'm not mistaken, Monday through Thursday, it was open for any Maumelle charities. If they wanted to use it, they were allowed to do that. So that's basically for 2 years what's been going on. Right now we're beginning to pick up. 22 was sporadic. 23, I have about 15. I had to hire somebody else to come, because folks are calling all time of day, all time of night. Somebody to come and show the venue. As I say, I have about 15 booked for this year, and about 3 booked for next year. What I'd like to happen is we do another contract for 2 years at the same rate that we had before. And let's see what happens after that. Because with the new venues opening up, we have the new one in Maumelle, we have the new one in around Crystal Hill on Wild River Country. We had, within that time span, we had the Center on the Lake open up. We had the Maumelle Center on Maumelle Boulevard, North Little Rock open up. So there were different challenges throughout the year. But as I say right now, well, if you remember, I asked to buy it. I had an appraiser come and appraise it. I presented a whole package to you guys, but you said that you couldn't sell it because it was a park. If you remember, I asked to, I guess we were voting on the tax to increase we have the best place in the state, that park. And realistically, I'd love to own it, but I don't think you should sell it. There's no place like it. If we had to put that event center on it like I was hoping that we would, no place could touch it. But that fell through. We didn't vote on it, And as I say, what I'm asking is, because I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. So I'm asking for the 2 years with the same contract, and then let's see where we go from there. Let's open this discussion up again. And I'm the kind of person, I don't ask. I'm always giving. When you guys wanted, when we had floods, guess who paid for those? The employees, not the employees, but the residents. We wrote checks for the residents, $100, just for them to live on. When we get a call from people, somebody's kid ran away. We paid we didn't pay plane fare. We couldn't afford plane fare. But we paid for a bus fare to get somebody's kids home. You know, she had run away. Well, we paid to get her back. When there was kids playing basketball or wanting to play basketball and couldn't afford to play basketball, guess who paid for kids that couldn't afford in our playground? You know, when you guys needed a 501c3, you know, guess nobody else wanted to touch it. Guess who raised their hand? You know. So as I say, I don't ask for much, but I'm asking them for this. I want 2 years. Let's revisit it in 25 and go from there.
We got a follow-up question here. Do you know how many events you might have had in like 2020, 2021, and 2022?
Very few paid.
Okay, about like 6,
Yeah,
7,
it's probably
something like
about
that.
6.
All right.
5 or 6.
Okay, that's what Ms. Mathis, I think, was estimating, or Philip or somebody
Mhm.
was. So.
And I'm, as you say, I'm still paying for somebody to go out there and show it. I'm still paying for, you know, toilets to be washed weekly, cleaned weekly. The Parks on the River guys are some of the best guys I've ever had to work with.
Talking about Rayburn's bunch?
Rayburn's bunch. Rayburn's team. You know, at the drop of a hat, anything that comes up, they take care of it. But I'm not gonna ask them to clean it. You know, that's what we did. So that's where I am.
Thank you. I think it's safe to say that for the city, this is not a profitable endeavor, which is what I think, we can just give that the case. It's out of contract. It's the only contract we have like this in the city. It was, I think my understanding or belief is that it was one of the things that that when we handled a lot of the billing that we've now got rid of and we've restructured that department, this was just something that slipped through the cracks. I do recall a conversation in early 2020 about whether we were going to send out invoices for it. At that time, everything was closed. They weren't allowed to use it, and it had just got out of contract. And I don't remember who I even talked with at the city. I said, let's revisit this in a couple months, and we can just renew the contract. The contract administrator is, from best we can tell, was in the finance department, not in parks, and just during the transitions, it just sort of got missed and there. Even so, I think we can say it's not a profitable endeavor for the city. Steve, Councilmember Mosley, you and I had talked about this when I was on the council 10 years ago, and it came around, and the conversation was always, well, if not this, then what, right? So I think we have several different options. We can look at renewing it. We can look at doing something completely different. There's a number of different things that we can do, but I think it's safe to say it's not profitable. Whether or not we choose to treat it that way, we can certainly get back on. When we started looking into it in the winter during the budget process, we began working on a contract. We halted that as soon as it looked like, or substantially halted it, once it looked like that we'd be coming back here before the contract was there. So, and I don't know that you were even involved on that, just on our end, trying to sort out how to do that. We think that if we do a contract, there are certain things that I think would benefit us from the inside, which is just a flat rental fee, and that includes utilities, and then we don't have, we're doing a lot of unnecessary paperwork and having to monitor this. So there are ways that it can be more efficient on our side, which would hopefully stop and prevent the delays we were seeing a few years ago. That said, I do have a number of buttons, folks who've patiently been waiting. So,
And keep in mind, I've invested about $30,000. I put in that floor, I tore down the walls, I put in the bathrooms.
thank you. Councilmember Grunwald?
Yeah, I paid for that.
Yes, I have been anxiously awaiting. So I've actually used this property. I don't know if any council members have used the property. I used it several years ago for my mom's retirement party. I also go out there regularly, just in the parking lot, and look around at the river. It has an insanely gorgeous view of the river. And there are always people down there fishing or walking around. And over the years, I think the mayor's right that there are different ways that would make things a little bit more efficient for the city and for Team Summit. But I really view it as a partnership and not that Team Summit owns it. You may disagree. But I see it as a partnership. I really do. Because it's such a beautiful venue, to me, it should be something that attracts people to Maumelle, whether it's for an event or, you know, they go to an event and go, I'd really like to live here. I see so many uses for it. I think that it's grossly underused. I'd love to see the city use it. I would love to see the Chamber of Commerce use it and surrounding businesses use it, especially because there's such a discounted price to use it. I could see summer concerts held on the grounds. I mean, I just think it's been an underutilized, unfortunately, a very underutilized property. But because I think there's a partnership there, I do think that we could do more on our end to help promote it. I think it's on the city's website, but I don't see a lot about it. And being in the business that I'm in of marketing and nonprofits and events and things like that, that world, nobody knows anything about it. And just about every resident I've ever talked to has no idea when I tell them about the Park on the River, this gorgeous event place that is so affordable. So to me, I see that kind of as the crux of, you know, with this partnership, we could better support Team Summit. It also makes complete sense to me what happened in 2021 and 22. So thank you for kind of explaining that. And I'm glad that, you know, we could all kind of work together during COVID, because that was, for people who are in the event business, it was pretty detrimental. It really was. So do you feel like that there could be more events if maybe the city somehow,
I know there could be more events.
Helped support,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's just a shout out on Facebook, hey, that, you know, we have this, because I see it as an asset for the city as well as for Team Summit.
There was a bunch of people here that have unpushed their button. Councilmember Gardner.
Oh, I should have left it unpushed. So I guess my only comment here is that we're currently out of contract. Is that everybody agrees with that? Just for efficiency's sake, I would welcome the mayor's office to get with Ms. Timmons and bring something back to the council, rather than us debate what we don't know tonight and just let y'all come back with an agreement. And then I guess on top of that, I've not been through this process before. This was done in 2015, and so I wasn't here then. Is this something that is required by state law to be bid out, or can we select a vendor? I didn't know if this had to be opened up. That's
Mr.
something
City
for y'all to
Attorney?
think about. I'm going to
Okay.
turn my light off, but I would welcome y'all to come back and, well, I turned it off. Never mind.
I believe there was a request for proposals some 16 years ago, and this was the proposal that was presented. Mr. City Attorney?
Y'all discuss the next 2 weeks and come back.
He's relieved your...
I don't want an answer tonight. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes. How many events would you say you had in a good year? You know, where it was a paying event and you know, a wedding or something that made you some money?
Keep in mind, to me, an event is an event, whether it's paid or non-paid. Probably about 20.
20 is a good year.
Yeah, but a good portion of that was, chamber using it, the city using it. It's
The 20 would include that, and that
Yes.
would be a non-paying
that would be
thing.
non-paid. Mhm.
Okay. That's all the questions I've got for you. I did want to visit with Courtney Dunn, have her pop
Okay.
up here and see what she thinks about the whole thing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Councilmember Holt?
Your statement, Mr. Mayor, that this is not a profitable situation, that's an understatement if I ever heard one. I've been on the council now this is my 9th year. This has been we are sitting here with a piece of property that we have not done anything with. What have we gotten out of this? I am absolutely vehemently opposed to any new contract being entered at all. This council, or representatives of the council, needs to be put together and come up with some kind of a plan that is a benefit to the city. We are not a charity organization. We're not a welfare organization. This is a profit and loss business. And you forgive my hostility about this, but we just have not accomplished anything with this. So let's don't play games. Let's set this up. If we have to hire an outside agency to come in who do things like this and find out what is the best way they can be set up to make money under whatever circumstances. But it needs to be either sold or do something that it is a financial benefit to this city. And as we say, the employees in general can use it. To me, this is a financial travesty, but whatever. I want to see any kind of an agreement in advance before any kind of under-the-table agreement is made. I don't mean under a table, I just mean that an agreement is made and then presented us to vote on one night. I want to know in advance of exactly what is going to be done to make this a profitable benefit. This is a property that is one of the most beautiful pieces that in the entire county, I guess. So let's don't leap until we do a careful study as to what the potential is for this piece of property. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Well, I'm not as vehemently opposed, but my thing is, yeah, we've had this for a long time. We've grown as a city. We started adding pickleball courts, the all-inclusive playground. I think it's probably a good time to look, kind of like everyone's going, hey, is this the best use? I don't know. It may be. It may not be. Before we jump into something long-term, do a good analysis, find some options. When I first saw this, I was like, this is great. It's kind of needs an answer, but what are the options? So personally, I think if we're going to do this, we should look and see if, what options are out there. Is there some other way that will benefit the people of the city more, or is this the best use? I don't know. I've only been there once personally, so just questions.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, sir. I'm glad Mr. Holt and Mr. Mazzoni spoke here, because that's the way I feel. We need to take a real hard look at what's best and what the residents might have the better chance of enjoying this thing too. Since especially it's not a profitable thing. I don't think we're not here to make a profit, because it's not making a profit the way it is now. And I've asked Mr. Rayburn and Ms. Dunn to perhaps share what their thoughts are on how they could use it. And let me start with Ms. Dunn, if you don't mind.
Well, to be clear, so these I don't know if they'll say this, my understanding is Councilmember Mosley asked them what they could come up with that it could be used for.
Yeah, and
Not
an
necessarily-
alternative.
Not necessarily things that they are proposing, but
Right.
they were requested to think of things.
We're throwing things out on
Just
the
so-
table.
I want that to be clear. So Courtney, come on down.
Yeah,
Courtney Dunn, 550 Edgewood Drive. So in my opinion, we absolutely do not need to sell that property. I agree with Ms. Timmons, and I want to thank her for all that she does for the city and the community. I want to keep in mind that this is going to be, the entrance to this property is going to be along the future Central Arkansas Regional Greenway. So that, I think that's a huge, that says something right there, that there's, you know, we need to capitalize on the traffic that'll be coming through there. And it is located at one of our city entrances. So I was asked to just come up with ideas, and I came up with some that I think are great ideas, but again, they're just ideas to float around. It could be used as a visitor center / welcome center. We could use it as, have some history on the walls, kind of like a museum, but just, you know, show our Maumelle history. We are a young city, so we do have a lot to show. We could sell Maumelle merch in there as well. Merchandise. So like Maumelle branded items could be sold in there. People could stop in, see the beautiful views, see what Maumelle is all about, buy some merch, and then add some park amenities. And I think Philip would agree, maybe add some more picnic tables or some other amenities park-wise. He may have more to speak on that. I also had the idea of possibly, I've not even really mentioned this to the chamber, but the chamber could maybe help run that facility if it was a welcome center / visitor center. And I think that's all I had on my list.
Yeah, let me ask you this. What about leasing it for a restaurant? I've always thought that that whole strip along the river there would be a great entertainment venue. And that park on the river is very similar to like a Cajun's Wharf or something like that. Do you feel like there's any restaurateurs that would be interested in such a thing?
I think that's an amazing location for a restaurant. And you say lease it, so I assume not sell it. I just hate, that is, I believe that's our only public access to the river, so I think that's a huge seller on that, and I think we don't need to lose sight of that and hold on to it and take advantage of it, honestly.
Right, okay. But
I can say it is not equipped for a restaurant right now. It would
Right.
need upfitting.
what about leasing for commercial space? Would that be a possibility?
I would like to see us take advantage of it being a public
Okay.
park and a place where our residents, like some of you have said, some people don't even know it's there, and I think that's sad because there are beautiful views. People should go out there on the weekends, hang out with their family, because it is a public park.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rayburn, could I ask you questions? Yeah, what would you do if it was put under your purview to just lease out like the pavilion at the park and the community center rooms and things like that? How would you handle that, and what other brilliant ideas you might have?
All right, well, first off, I think the Parks and Recreation Department is a service, and we do not typically profitable. I mean, we run a service to provide service to all the citizens of Maumelle. And so that park right there, like Ms. Grunwald said, it's used. You can go down there anytime. It's a nice day. It's not as packed as Lake Willisteen, but I mean, there's cars coming and going, eating their lunch down there and leaving out. Now, with that property, that lower property, since I've been working here, has flooded 3 times. So I really wouldn't want to put anything on that lower level unless it is waterproof, or because we replaced that fence twice. The pier out there, it's been replaced twice or refurbished twice. It's still the same one. We had never lost it, but we've come close to the cables breaking. Now, as far as the house goes, I think it does have several options. Courtney mentioned the Greenway bike path coming through there.
And there's still some land there, as if you're driving into the park, it would be on your right. That wooded area that goes up by Mr. Wells's fence and all that. We could look at different, pump tracks, bicycle park that would fit in with the greenway and be a, destination point for people using that pass system. But yeah, as far as the, when that was purchased by the council and Birch Johnson at the time, there was no plan whatsoever for that park. They told I wasn't the director at that point in time, but I was with the department. We were told to get it open. So we put a gate in so you could actually open something and lock it up. But it was never turned over to the Parks Department, say, hey, y'all come up with an idea of turning this into a park. Because it quickly came in and went under contract, so what the Parks Department does is we take care of it. We take care of the grounds, make sure the house is, doesn't have a leaky roof, the air conditioners are working, and all that kind of stuff. So our department basically handles that, and we've done that from the beginning. It's been our role. But yes, I do think there's some other activities that could coexist and still use the house for something, still use the lower area, and then there's enough land there for some other high ground that wouldn't flood out when the river floods.
Now, would you be able to say if this was just put under your purview, if somebody called up and wanted to hold a wedding there, could you just rent that out? Does your computer program support all that, like your other stuff?
Yeah, it would be just like we rent out the south room, north room,
Okay.
the room at the community center.
So
now,
you-
what we couldn't do is what Timmons does is she's the whole package.
Right.
We would just rent out a space. We wouldn't provide, all the chairs they would need and the tables. That would be, a wedding planner type position.
But you could pass out business cards of people that might help folks with that.
Correct. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend you pass
Or
out
a
other
list,
private
or a
visitors.
list or something.
But what we would do is, and we would set like from this time to this time, you can come look at it, but we wouldn't do after hour stuff or anything like that without having to hire extra
Okay.
employees.
But you could rent it out for folks wanting to have a birthday party or anything like that.
Yeah, we would treat it just like, pavilion at Lake Willisteen or our rooms at the community center.
Okay. Okay, so you could administer activities there through your park department?
Good.
Okay, that's something I wanted to make sure that's an option. In other words, Mr. Rayburn administered the thing and it's open to anybody and everybody for whatever kind of a legal event we want to allow to have there, so. What about,
Most weddings want the turnkey.
yeah, right, you wouldn't do that, so, yeah. I understand.
I don't want to be a wedding planner.
You don't look like one, so.
I've been through one and I had to pay for, so, but yeah, I'm not.
Okay. Okay, that's the only question I've got. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the possibility Mr. Holt would like to sell that house, and I would imagine that a good city planner, and the city attorney could get together and figure out how to just sell that house and use the rest of it as our park if we would like. You see any reason why that couldn't be done, Mr. City Attorney?
I'm not sure yet. I'd have to look at the property records. I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't sell the house and obviously give people an easement across the lawn. I don't see any reason you couldn't if you wanted. When Caleb and I talked about it, maybe 3 weeks ago, he mentioned that the city got some funding for the boat ramp, which might have been federal funding, which might have restricted our ability to sell the property. So I definitely need to look into that. But if you're just talking about the house, I don't, not knowing anything about the property, other than how you've all described it today, and my one conversation with Caleb, no, I don't see any reason.
Okay.
The Arkansas Game and Fish put in the ramp and the boat dock, if that helps. But now they may have used some federal money with their money, I don't know.
Well, that's all I've got for tonight. I've got a lot of food for thought. I appreciate the ideas and I think just we ought to just look at this and also I think there's got to be somewhere where the residents can go out there and have a glass of wine and enjoy the view in the evening. I don't know whether that's a restaurant venue or just opening it a couple of nights a week for residents to bring a bottle of wine or a Coke out there and enjoy the view for a couple of hours or whatever. But I think we're very underutilizing it for the average resident. I don't think the average resident can use that house. And I can remember when it was first opened back under Birch Johnson, they had an open house for the residents and it was swamped. There were people hanging over the rails looking at the river. They were selling glasses of wine or handing it out, I don't know which, but it was a wonderful evening and everybody was talking to each other and getting to know each other. So whatever we do with it, I would love to see something like that happen. Anyway, I'm all for extending our conversation to next week. I don't know if that means tabling it or what, but I think we ought to think about it. If anybody wants to make a decision tonight, go ahead and make a motion, but I'd just soon mull it over tonight.
Councilmember Shin?
Could we get a plat emailed to us that shows the layout of that property and of what the city actually owns there?
Sure. Councilmember Tierney?
Yeah, just to be throwing out ideas, when Mr. Mosley was talking about how nice it was to be at the lake and just enjoying a meal and looking out over the river with a drink. What about putting food trucks down there? Just to throw out an idea.
Are you asking?
I was just throwing out a suggestion,
Okay.
yeah.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, and I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Any additional discussion on agenda item G, Park on the River? If there's nothing further, we'll move on. Seeing nothing, that concludes new business. We'll move on to mayor's comments. I have none. Councilmember comments. Councilmember Holt.
I voted indeed for the deal with the license plate process. I'm voted to delay it 1 week. I thought that wouldn't hurt, but since we didn't vote to do it that way, I did vote for it. I am disappointed, however, that we did not have this information laying before us in advance so that we could ask better questions and understand more about it. I support our police force. My own son's a policeman, as everybody knows, and I don't hold back on anything. But I do think that there is item 5 on page 4 happens to talk about this specifically, that any entity that uses license plate readers should be required to report its usage publicly on at least an annual basis. And then it talks about the Arkansas statute and requiring that. So I think that there's somewhere in this that the general public should be at least with a courtesy information about it. But I am not opposed to it. I'm just disappointed that we were not better prepared for something. This is a major item, and I think it's a big item, and I think we need to always make certain that we're taking the attitude or the feelings of the public in account. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And just a reminder for the record, the policy was not voted on tonight. It was just a draft given as an FYI. Councilmember Tierney.
Yeah, 2 quick questions. One, any progress on getting bids for building a roundabout at Club Manor in South Odom?
No.
Any anticipation of when we might have that?
No. So we talked about it during budget session. We're not gonna bid it out, but I was gonna talk to the engineers to see if we could get an updated cost estimate.
All right.
And so that I can work on.
Okay, so no timetable at this time?
No.
All right. The other question, and this might be for Chief Buford, about, how we had the Fire Chief Buford, is he available? Yeah. Can I ask you a quick question?
That's why you shouldn't hang out this long.
Thank you for doing that. As everybody knows, there's been an event happened in East Palestine with rail car derailments and toxic pollution of the city. And with Maumelle having rail lines running directly through our city, I was curious, is there a way that do we have access to the knowledge? Because we know there's toxics coming through. I mean, they won't tell us, but I think we can probably ask, but what they will tell us is another question. But is there a way that we can go through and look at the topography map of our city and see where that might cross over with anything like, gas lines and oil lines? Because I know we've got an oil line running along 430 that had a leak recently during another rail car incident over in Mayflower. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of exposure we might have to a disaster, and then do we have an evacuation plan for this type of event?
Bo Buford, 2000 Murphy Drive. So one of the things that I did look at when I came over here is we are not exactly set up for special operations, hazmat tech, monitoring, and those type things. What we do have, though, is North Little Rock right next to us. They have the best trained special ops team in this state. I know that for a fact because I trained them and funded them. They also have the best hazmat technology, the best locating. They have this system called Cameo, Marplot, and Aloha. And what those things do, they track and they monitor different things. They can monitor if there's a release, how you plot it, project where the plumes and things that are going to head into the neighborhoods. By using that technology, you can say, if there's something in the atmosphere, you can project by the wind speed and the wind direction where it's going to move and where it's going to go. Because we don't have the personnel trained to do that, the hazmat technicians, except for myself, if that something happened quickly, we have that automatic aid with North Little Rock until we can get that built. And I'm in the process of trying to build these things for us. The best thing that we would do is invite them in, and we would use those projections and make those adjustments quickly. The one station that's going in Burns Park is one of those auxiliary type stations. They have all of those the technology and capabilities, which is one of the reasons the decision was made to move that station to Burns Park, because it is the second station that comes to backfill Maumelle. And so I don't feel comfortable that we could handle this by ourselves. We would be able to identify threats, but we would have to use our partnerships to be able to mitigate successfully until we can build our plans. And just to put it in context, it takes years to build some of the infrastructure that we don't currently have. But I am in the process, and when you look at some of the budget items that we asked for this year and some of the budget items you'll be asking for in the next 3 years, it's with that to build those type plans. And the other great thing is I can say, and I'm not saying we're completely dependent upon North Little Rock, but if we call, they're coming, and they're coming fast. And they can be here within minutes. And I do know how to use that technology, and that technology is one of the best that you can possibly use. It will tell us exactly how fast things are moving. It'll tell us where things are going to be, where we can guesstimate where they're going to be, if things are high in the atmosphere, if things are in the low atmosphere, and then we could use our mitigation plan to evacuate the citizens in that regard. So I hope that answers some.
Yeah, so we do have an option, there is surrounding services that could assist us in the
Yes.
event of emergency. We don't actually have an evacuation plan or anything like that, do we?
I have reviewed what we have. I didn't inherit a traditional evacuation plan, but one of the things that I'm working on, some of the FEMA documents and some of the FEMA reimbursement things, 210, 211, is I've got the city somewhat divided into zones, an A, B, C, and D, like I did in North Little Rock, except for we had 11 zones. And so in those zones, that's how you set up evacuation centers and evacuation plans. I have not even come close to finishing that. That is something I've identified as a weakness that we have, and something that we need to look at. And I am looking at that, but it is not something we have ready to go right this second.
Great, well, I'm glad you are looking at that. And then back to my other question about, you know, the topographical maps. I mean, is there a way we can take a look and see if the rail lines are crossing
Yes,
anywhere close?
we have that through what North Little Rock has. And I have borrowed some of the things that I had from North Little Rock and brought them to Maumelle Mill. So that, as far as the rail yard, what they have and how to identify everything, that we have some of that technology, yes.
All right, so is
Or
there,
identification,
so
rather.
is there like a hotspot or, you know, high danger zone where if there were a derailment in that area, where there'd be other factors that could compound it, anything close to any kind of roadways?
Not that I can see
Okay.
firsthand in Maumelle Mill. The bigger danger lies to North Little Rock.
Yeah, I figured it's probably more our
Yes,
proximity.
there's a major gas line that runs through TEPCO, and it runs right smack dab where some infrastructure is in North Little Rock. That's something else I can take a look at, because I have not really done a lot of research on that. That is something that I can do for sure.
Great, well, I'm glad you are.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad somebody's working on it. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
That's my question.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, I had several items here, I'm sorry. But two of the items I wanted to mention here were related to the Maumelle Country Club Events Center that was approved a couple of meetings ago. At the time, I was trying to propose a condition to put some no parking signs on Parr Drive. And I wanted to bring that up as something that I hope we can have the traffic committee meet on, have some citizen input and that sort of thing, and perhaps make a decision to put some no parking signs on there. Mr. Mayor, how do you go about calling such a meeting?
I'll start by looking at the ordinances right quick.
If you would like, you can get back to me at the next meeting. It's not that big a deal, but.
Mr. Mayor, I think you said, when Mr. Mosley asked about it, that there's a parking and streets committee?
Yes, traffic committee.
I think that's what your answer was the last time.
Yes, he's asking how do you call the meeting?
Does the council have to call it, or do you call it, or how? Like I said, if you want, we can get back to next
No,
meeting.
if I walk out of here without looking it up, I'll never get to it. And you all could check that as well. I don't know that it says anything about how to call a meeting. So I will set it up and be absent, but no. When would you like it to be?
Just as soon as conveniently possible for everybody.
How about Tuesday, the 14th?
Which ward is that, 2 or 1? I never understand.
Oh, Lord.
I think it's 2 and 3.
2 and 3?
Is it split? Oh,
You guys-
four-person committee.
You guys took my area away. So.
Then you got the police, public works, park, mayor.
Okay, Parking and Traffic Committee meeting is hereby called for 6 PM Tuesday, March 14th, for whatever wards that is. Yeah, 6 PM work, or I'm not gonna luck out and get a daytime.
Part of it is private street. I believe they're talking about putting.
Before we set a meeting, can we look into that before we?
Look into what?
Which ward?
Well,
And who's
whether
we?
it's a private drive, can we not set a meeting tonight? And I appreciate, I want to do this, but I didn't push my button, I'm sorry. But can we actually look and see what our authority is? Can we look and see what our authority is before we call a traffic committee meeting, please, sir?
I thought we had established that that was a private drive.
portions of it are.
Portions of it are. Where are you looking at the, no parking?
I think along wasn't it Par Drive? I think it was the public part of Par Drive.
Yeah, so if we're talking about the public part of Par Drive, that's what goes up to about Sand Trap, I believe. Yeah, it goes right to the northwest, the north side of Sand Trap. So the private part is what extends beyond. If you look at Google Maps, it's clear which is the city street and which is not. If we're talking about putting no parking signs on Par Drive between Club Manor and Sand Trap, that's all public. Does that answer your question?
A group of 200 residents that was one thing they were wanting, so I think that's probably something that would work out. Apparently there's problems when parking happens haphazardly along there.
Okay, I'm setting it for the 14th at 6. Yes, here in the council chambers. Councilmember Shin?
Any updates on our eminent domain? Or were you gonna get to that in your part?
I can answer you now. Filed a complaint, served the landowners. Landowners retained counsel, filed a motion to dismiss, responded to the motion to dismiss. The judge has set it for a hearing later this month. Before the hearing, the landowners will probably file a reply, which is just the last brief, and then I'll appear before the judge and we'll argue.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Any additional council member comments? Seeing none, City Council Member Mosley.
I told you I had 2 or 3. The planning department, at the last subcommittee meeting, Pat Landis, and again, this is related to the event center, she announced she's going to go ahead and come up with an ordinance. She's going to look into it, and I think, if I understood her correctly, said she's going to look into and perhaps recommend an ordinance that better notifies the public on something major like that. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So hopefully we'll have something forthcoming in that regard. I encourage her to do that. Let's see, Nemours flooding. We had, over there in Country Club, we had a group of residents and we met with them. We spent, the city spent a lot of time, Mr. Grummer and Mr. Hogan spent a lot of time looking at this, the city engineer, and we finally determined that the main flooding was caused by just backwater from the bayou, and there's nothing that can really be done unless house flooding starts happening. Right now, there's no house flooding, so we decided to do nothing on that, but there's a lady that experiences flooding that comes down from behind her house from the golf course into Nemours, and the city has offered her a opportunity to have some city design drainage put between their houses to get that water out of her backyard and down to the street faster. I think it's a deal where she pays 25% and the city pays 75%. So Mr. Hogan, I think, is working on that. I'm going to be brief on this. I'm not here to belabor it, but there was another dog attack back on January 20th. Did not make the news. I had residents calling me about a woman in the street or in their front yard screaming on the morning of January 20th. I've gathered police reports, fire department reports, and the animal control reports. And a woman was attacked by a dog that she was either fostering or was thinking of adopting on, what was the name of that street? I don't see it right off, but anyway, her neighbors, she had to flee her house. She had 5 dogs in the house, 2 of them were pit bulls. And she told the fire department there were 2 pit bulls, and one of them had attacked her. She was bleeding from large tears on her arms and on her calf. The fire department packaged her up and sent her off in an ambulance to the hospital. The police department showed up. They entered the house. 2 of the dogs got out. Anyway, they called animal control, who came and got the dogs. Animal control reported that the woman suffered a broken arm and was in surgery after the attack. And nobody seems to know how she came out. We don't know. I asked the fire department if they'd followed up. They don't regularly do that. But anyway, we've had another dog attack as a result of our lifting the ban on the dangerous dog ordinance. And I don't know if anybody would have known about it if I hadn't had a couple of people call me. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So going back to Parr Drive, that portion of the road is in both wards 2 and 3. I don't know why I thought it was your ward, Councilmember Mosley.
It used to be it was a close call on that.
So then I was just kind of figuring you were calling the meeting. But if you're not on the committee, then I'd take somebody in those wards that would serve on the committee, which is both 2 and 3. If you guys want to call one, I'm game for that. I'm not interested. I'm not going to call one at this time. Okay. Yeah, the parking and traffic committee meeting. Sorry. I had just, when you asked how that goes about, I just figured, well, somebody on the committee can call it, but.
Well, who's on the committee? It would be.
It'd be wards 2 and 3.
So there's 4.
And then the mayor, the police chief, and street director. Yeah, or public works.
Okay, so any of the aldermen on the 2 or 3 could call that meeting.
Or it doesn't really say. Usually someone on the committee has to call it. Or I guess the council could vote on it as a whole. If you wrote that down, I'm scratching that off unless one of y'all want to have it. Thank you, sorry. Any additional council member comments? City attorney comments? No, city clerk comments? No. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I had a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.